Hey guys, Hot Rod Reverend here. Have you just bought a car or truck that's powered by a Y-Block 4 V8? Maybe you're new to this engine and you don't know much about it. Well, stick around. We're going to give you everything that you need to know to become familiar with it and be happy with its maintenance and performance. Before we get into the Y-Block Ford V8 engine, we want to let you know that this is an AI-free zone here at the Hot Rod Reverend channel. In 1954, Ford unveiled the 239 cubic inch overhead valve V8 engine. Now, this is a separate overhead valve V8 engine from the Lincoln and heavy-duty truck series that was actually introduced in 1952. The blocks may look a little similar, but they're very different, externally and internally. About the only thing that will swap out is the oil pump. That is about it on these two engines. Do not get them confused. The Y-Block got that name because of the deep skirt of the crankcase. That block, the short block, really formed a Y instead of a V. This made the bottom end of the engine very stout and very strong. It's the main reason why past 1957, from 58 to 64, really the Y-Block was known as a truck engine because of how strong it was on the bottom end. Most of the Ford cars in 1954, you could have purchased the 239 cubic inch size. Ford did make the 256 cubic inch for the Mercury line, also for the Interceptor engines that Ford would use in the police cars and the special government or civic authority cars. Now, just to go through a few differences very quickly with you, 1954 model year when the Y-Block came out, the 239 is a little bit different from the rest of the engine series from 55 and later. The cam bearings in the 239 of 1954 are a little larger than the cam bearings from 55 on. Also, the 1954 model year, you had a Tang drive distributor. Of course, that also meant that your drive for your oil pump would also be this Tang drive setup. From 1955 to 64, Ford used the common hex shaft to make that distributor with the oil pump, and it was driven, of course, off of the camshaft gear like normal. The camshaft gear and the distributor gear from your 54 and you go to 55 to 64, there is a difference between that. The 54 kind of stands alone with that, with its tooth count, so you do have to be careful about that if you're rebuilding an engine, and you really need to know what you have. While we're talking about the 239 real quick, it'd probably be very important to recognize the early Y-Blocks did appear to have a fuel pump that seemingly was mounted upside down, but it wasn't. That was the way it came from the factory. You look at shop manuals or look at photos, you'll find that to be the case. 55, the filter for the fuel pump, you could see was underneath of the fuel pump, not on top, like the 54 engines came out. Another difference of the 239 was that the thermostat housing had a bypass fitting that was for your bypass hose to go to your water pump that was 1/2 inch in diameter. 55 to 64, they're all 5/8 of an inch. The water pump on a 239 is a little bit smaller than the rest of the Y-Blocks from 256 to 312. 1955, Ford introduced the 272 cubic inch and the 292 cubic inch size engines. The 272s came in the passenger cars, and then also the 292s would come mostly in just the Thunderbirds. Now, also in 1955 with the trucks, Ford continued to make the 239, but that block was an EBV block. A little bit different from the 239s of the 54 model year. In the 54 model year, you had larger cam bearings than you did in the 55 model year with the 239s that would match the rest of the engine series along the way up to 312. For the next model year in 1956, Ford introduced their 312 cubic inch engine. Now, these are readily available in Thunderbirds, but not really available in passenger cars until late in the model year. The passenger cars that came with the 312 from the factory in 1956 would have a P as a part of their VIN code. In 1957, Ford was manufacturing still the 272, the 292, and the 312, with 312, of course, being the king. 1957 was the best year for Ford in Mercury in the Y-Block line and the performance, for torque and horsepower. 1957 happened to be the best model year for Ford for the Y block because the FE series was going to be introduced in 1958, and in 1957 Ford had made a lot of improvements. You could get on the 312 the 2 4-barrel setup. There was the very rare supercharger setup that you could get that mostly came on Thunderbirds, but it did find its way on at least 100 cars or so that came from the factory. You had the best year for cylinder heads, the best year for intake manifolds from Ford as Ford introduced a 2x4 setup. 1957 as well, Ford also went to what we would say would be the modern square bore carburetor. The Holley, Edelbrock, whatever, would fit right onto a 1957 Ford 4-barrel intake manifold. After 1957, the Y block really went through a period of years before it entered production in 64 in the U.S., where really it was being detuned. And the compression numbers were getting a little bit lower. The heads were not as good. Things like the ECZG head that you probably heard about by now, or maybe the 5752 113 heads that are very good as well. But what ends up happening is Ford put so much stock into the FE series by 1958 that the Y block really became a baseline engine, and especially known, or it especially came to be known as a truck engine, especially when we think about the 292. Now, the 292 cubic inch version happens to be the size that Ford made the most of all the Y blocks. But with the 312 being so rare and being so popular, and of course being the best from the factory for horsepower and torque, anytime you see a Y block for sale, most of the time on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, a swap meet, whatever it might be, everybody says what they have is a 312, but most of the time it ends up being a 292. If you're not familiar with these engines from the 50s, one of the things that will frustrate you very much is to learn that in 1954, Ford was using what was called the Load-O-Matic distributor. What this basically means is that each distributor, 54, 55, and 56, all 3 years for the Y block, were vacuum advance only. There was no mechanical advance, 1954, 55, and 56. This meant that the vacuum signal from the distributor advance canister was especially matched to the carburetor that was put on the engine when it left the factory. That meant that the distributor and the carburetor were especially matched to each other. Now, this may not seem like a very big deal, but what happens is when people want to swap out carburetors, people want to swap out distributors, you have to understand how the Load-O-Matic system works. There are modifications that you can make to your carburetors, a Holley 94, Holley 4000, and I'll put a link here in the description for you that you can find out where these articles are at. I also have these videos here on my channel. It will help you know how to modify the carburetor if you want to keep the carburetor and get a better distributor from 1957 to 64 for the Y block that will pop right in. You can have vacuum and mechanical advance. If you want to keep your vacuum advance only distributor and use a modern carburetor, you are out of luck. That will not work. That's a mistake that many people make. Now, admittedly, if you're not familiar with this engine, there are going to be some things that will frustrate you right off the bat. Number one, a lot of people scratch their heads when they see that there are horizontally oriented, stacked intake ports and obviously an air gap that's underneath of the intake manifold where there is a valley pan to cover the lifter. Secondly, the Ford Y block only has solid lifters. There is no way to have hydraulic lifters in a Ford Y block. Do not get this confused with the Lincoln Y block, which does have hydraulic lifters. That is a nuance of the Ford Y block and having solid lifters, which means that you need to make sure you have your rocker arm, the lash, adjusted correctly on your rocker arms. The next part of the Y block that makes it unique would be its timing set. Setting the timing gears on your Y block Ford is very different from most any other engine ever manufactured. Please take a look at this diagram here. You'll see where you have to make sure you count the number of links that are between the two dots. Unlike a lot of engines where you'll just take the two dots and just go top to bottom and line them up from the crank gear to the cam gear, that's not the way it works on the Y block. The Y block, you've got to get the cam gear at roughly the 3 o'clock position, and you can see here by this diagram, by this photo, where the crank gear needs to be. Make sure you count those pins that are between them. This is very easy to get confused, but this is the way that the timing works. You can tell by some of the links I have in the description below that I have popped in a cam right here into the Y block. I've popped a cam right here into the engine while it was sitting in the car just to see if I could pull this off, and it is doable. And while we're talking about the timing set and the lifters, it's important to remember for any engine that has mechanical lifters, you need to make sure that whenever you swap out cams, you also swap out lifters. Remember that in mechanical, a lifter camshaft is that each lifter face is mated to each one of those lobes on your cam. Do not swap out cams without putting in new lifters or lifters that match or have already been mated to the lobes of the cam that you are installing. That is very critical. A very quick way to wipe out your cam is to install a cam with used lifters. Something else about the Y block, if you're doing any rebuilding or maybe you're taking off a head and you're going to put on a new head gasket, make sure that your head gaskets are oriented correctly. I've got a video on my playlist that will show you how to make sure that your head gaskets are put on correctly. I've even had a subscriber or two that have taken care of a tremendous problem with overheating by making sure that they have taken care of a tremendous problem with overheating by removing their heads, and when they discovered that the head gasket was on backwards. You need to make sure that your head gaskets are installed correctly. Now that you're the proud owner of a Y block, you're probably wondering about where to get information on maintaining it. I really encourage you, visit yblocksforever.com. There's a forum over there. It's wonderful to join. There is a Y block Facebook group. There's actually 2 or 3 of them. Basically, the one that Charlie McCraney runs as the moderator is probably the one most prevalent, most well-known. There's some great websites out there. I encourage you to get on FordYBlock.com. That's owned by John Mummert. John Mummert puts out a lot of Y block parts, mostly performance-oriented, but he has stock parts as well. Also visit yblockguy.com. That's my buddy Tim McMaster up in Hanford, California. Hanford Auto Supply, Hanford Machine. You can look through the playlist here. I've got a bunch of videos of me and Tim running around up there in his machine shop having a good time. You'll get a lot of great information from him. And then also visit Eaton Balancing. EatonBalancing.com. My buddy Ted Eaton out in Texas has a great shop out there, very well known for Y block builds as well. And really, those 3 men, probably the best well-known because they have machine shops and some of the work they've been doing down through the years. Now, there are some other ones. Really encourage you, if you don't have the book by James Eichmann called How to Rebuild the Y Block Ford V8, you need to get a hold of that book. Another book that you really need to read is one by Charlie Morris. This is really a great update and really just something the last several years that Charlie has written and put out. It got great full-color photos. If you don't have a copy of that, you own a Y block powered vehicle, you really need to own a copy of this book. It's wonderful. Hey guys, a real quick commercial here. Give us just a minute. I want to tell you about these 2 thick manuals that I have for sale on the website and also the engine manual from Ford. Hang on. Hey guys, Rod Reverend here. I've got the best option for you, the best way you can spend $20 on your project if you own a 1949 to a 1959 Ford passenger car, and that is this. I've got both of these manuals. Now, these are almost 1,000 pages long. These are the Ford parts manuals. Now, this edition is 1964. I've got the text catalog that has all of the part numbers, what the parts are named, what they're called. It's all organized very well. And then, of course, I've also got the book that has all of the illustrations in it. This is for everything, body parts, mechanicals, trim. A lot of questions get answered by these books, and the great, wonderful thing about this is that what you can do, you can print this off online. Let me show you how this works here on the website. What you do is you go to the website here. I'll take you through the process. You see the listing here on my website, rodreverend.com, in the shop. When you click on this and you determine, hey, I'm going to buy this, you pay 20 bucks. What happens is you get a link that is sent to you to download these files. Now, I've got more than just these 2 books. I'll talk about that in a minute. But you get these books. These are the anchors. These are the best part, I guess I should say, of getting this. So what happens is you download all the files with that link. It's a zip file. That means it's compressed. You have to unzip it, put it in a folder on your computer so you can access it later on. Now, these are both in what's called a PDF. Basically, that means this is organized, and what you can do is just scroll through the pages, and you can click on any page you want. You can zoom in, zoom out. The wonderful thing about this is that instead of using original manuals and paying a hefty price and dirtying up different things or whatever you might need, is real bulky, you can just print off the page that you need, take this with you to the garage, and work on whatever you want. When you're done, take the paper and just throw it away. It's not a problem. Secondly, if you're going to a swap meet, this is just invaluable information here. What you can do is print off a page of part numbers that you might need, and you can use these part numbers as a reference. If you need illustrations, of course, you can print those off. But again, once you're done with this, hey, just take it and throw it away. It's not a problem. You don't have to worry about ruining or damaging your original manuals because you now got it in a digital file format. Also included in this download is Ford's late 50s engine manual. Now, there are a lot of pages to this, and you can see here, I think there's almost 100 or so. I'll put this up here on the screen for you. This is just a sample page at the beginning. You've got the 6-cylinder, of course, that's in this. You've got the early FE engine that's in this, and of course, what we feature here on HotRodReverend.com and on the channel is the Y block as well. These are very good pages, specifics, updates, both in these manuals from 1964 and also in the engine manual. Also in the download are a lot of pictures, a lot of freebies, a lot of other things. There's some Paxton McCulloch information on there, the supercharger. There's the overdrive transmission, the 3-speed overdrive, the Borg Warner, the 259s and the T85s that came out there in the 50s. There's some great information on that. Lots of tech that you can download and print off whatever you need. I guarantee you this is the best way to spend $20 on your project in the garage. You can't go wrong by getting a hold of these digital files. Buy them today. Now, the video's gotten long enough, but before we let you go, one of the things that guys have a lot of questions about would be parts. Where do I find parts? Now, there are some good restoration companies across the nation that are making repop parts. I can think of T-Bird Auto. I can think of Concourse. I will leave some of these links in the description below. Probably Dennis Carpenter would come to mind very quickly. But don't forget that you can still go to Napa and get yourself Y-block engine parts. You can still go to rockauto.com, and look up your car, look up your truck. You can still buy parts. I bought valves for my ECZG head, valve seats as well, also from Rock Auto, gaskets, all kinds of things like that. There are companies out there that have good parts, quality parts for the Ford Y-block. We've already mentioned Mummert. We've mentioned Ted Eaton as well. What you're going to have difficulty in finding most probably are used parts. Used parts, I don't like eBay very much. I've got a video out about that. I'll leave a link in the description below about just being careful. Amazon will have some Y-block parts. I think about new parts there, not so much in the way of used. But Facebook Marketplace can be a place to... Facebook Marketplace can be a venue where you can find used parts. Swap meets are very important. If you get on some of these forums, I think Ford Barn's still out there. That's a good one. The Y Blocks Forever we talked about. The 57 Ford forum as well. There are still some good means and methods of getting parts for these cars if you're willing to look, root around a little bit on the internet, and I'm sure that you'll find it. Now, sometimes the speed parts or the performance parts are the most difficult to find because a lot of companies are no longer producing them. For instance, I found this Edelbrock 3-deuce intake for the Y block just about 2 hours from me here in LA County. I found that on Facebook Marketplace. These parts are still around. You can still find them, but you're going to have to do a little bit of legwork to locate them. And don't be surprised, they're going to come at a premium because of how rare they are. Now, there's a lot of guys across the country who message me and ask questions about things. I'm more than happy to help. Shoot me an email at dan.jessup@hotrodreverend.com, dan.jessup@hotrodreverend.com. I'll get to you as soon as I can. I am a preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm a full-time assistant pastor here at LA County. So I may not be able to answer you right away, and if I don't know the answer, hopefully I can put you in touch with someone who does. Of course, get on the playlist here. Watch everything that we have for you. We've got a lot here on the channel. I mentioned some other guys. My buddy Tim McMaster, yblockguy.com. I'll leave a link, obviously, in the description to his channel, and then also John Mummert's channel. John and Jeff have been putting out quite a bit lately on the Y-Block build. I've got my own Y-Block build series, and I'm sure it's bound to be a help to you. Well, fellas, that's a wrap for today on the Y-Block Ford V8 engine. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Please help us out. Subscribe, like, share the channel. Very soon we hit 5,000 subscribers. We're going to have a giveaway for a B intake. That's that larger 4-barrel intake that Ford began to make in 1957. Stick around to the channel and then also visit hotrodreverend.com. Subscribe over there, and we'll see you on the next one.